Good morning to you, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Santa Monica, California, United States of America. June 18, 2021, June 19 in Myanmar. Today is a tribute to my ally, revolutionary, mentor, friend, Aung San Suu Kyi, who is being paraded before an Orwellian terrorist tribunal in her country of Myanmar, Burma, at this very moment. It's her birthday, and I'd like to share quite extemporaneously today and tomorrow, and very likely on Sunday, a three-part tribute to Aung San Suu Kyi, and I might add right here at the beginning, not just her as person, woman, state councilor, elected civilian leader of Myanmar, incarcerated, imprisoned at the moment, but the people of Burma, all ethnicities, all the women and men, nuns and monks, fighting, struggling, courageously rising up in solidarity to confront the evil of what's known by the acronym MASAC, Burma's evolving present-day Pol Pot Khmer Rouge. In its early stages, it should be likened to the earliest stages of the genocide in Cambodia under Pol Pot, known by the acronym MASAC, a tribute to Aung San Suu Kyi. May I encourage you to engage, embody the revolutionary qualities of the civil disobedience movement of beloved Myanmar, the democracy movement, the struggle for freedom, the second great independence movement, by being a force multiplier. If not now, when? If not you, who, as it's been said? May I invite you, may I encourage you to activate, action, 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 as has been said by so many people. Put your hope into action. May you share this video frequently throughout the talk, after the talk, and become part of Burma's revolution of the spirit, the second great coming. Thank you for tuning in today. Just an extemporaneous rant, rave, scream for Aung San Suu Kyi and the freedom-loving people of Burma and the world. 1988, she leaves her home in Oxford with her husband and family, where she had been for some years, to return to Burma, to be with her ailing, dying mother in Rangoon, where she grew up, 54 University Avenue. Quickly, a revolution broke out. Months later, she joined her famous speech at the Shwedagon Pagoda. Nearly 500,000 people. I am continuing in the footsteps of my father, General Aung San, the second great independence movement, to finish and to create and to restore and to elevate freedom and human rights and democracy in my beloved Burma. Imagine from that moment, I don't know exactly when it was, 88, 89, here we are, June 2021. Pause for a minute, if I may invite us. Reflect upon, feel into the men and women, the nuns and monks that have chosen to engage nonviolently. And equally those women and men, equally, who've taken up arms, I've met many of them, to engage and try to transform this culture over those decades. How many have died? How many have been incarcerated? How many have been tortured? How many have been assassinated? And even in the last 3 months, since the beginning of this military coup d'etat by Ming Online and the Thamada, the military, 850 or so people, women and men, girls and boys, children, killed, assassinated, tortured to death at the hands of MASAC. How many? 5,200 or so incarcerated at this moment. A legacy of revolutionaries embodying the timeless qualities of ethical and spiritual courage to confront the injustices of a military unit that has turned from armed forces into a terrorist organization, and they're doing it with the power of conscience. All women and men, irrespective of nationality, language, and religion, are born equal in dignity in conscience, to paraphrase the preamble to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the most incarcerated, tortured, abused 3 pages in the world. Aung San Suu Kyi unequivocally, and the men and women of Myanmar, embody the revolutionary qualities found in that sacred doctrine of conscience, of dignity, and of rule of law, preserving through their voice and their actions, right? The right to speak your mind, the right to congregate in groups, to discuss the values and principles embodied in culture, in politics, and religion, to practice one's own spirituality in peace, to live free of need and of fear. Reflect on that. Someone is at your door. It has been broken down. You're being grabbed by the throat. You are being carted off to the nearest prison. You now are a political prisoner. Welcome to Burma over the last 35 years. Welcome to Hong Kong. The genocide in Tibet. Burma, we refuse to become the next Tibet. Aung San Suu Kyi, right now, being denied funds from her lawyers to feed herself and her colleagues near her at an undisclosed prison camp somewhere in that country, not able to even have funds to eat. We feel she is embarking on, has been on a hunger strike. Her funds, as it's been relayed internationally, are dwindling fast. Think of where she is as a representative, as a symbol, as democracy and freedom and conscience. I want to emphasize the word conscience for myself here, and dignity and compassion and loving kindness, not just fantasy faux meta, just through the thought or the emotion, in dynamic action to refuse complicity with Masak. I don't want your money, and I'm not going to demonize you. I'm going to do what is mindfully right for me in conscience. Refuse to participate in evil. So rad. I'm inviting you to invite me, to invite our friends to be force multipliers here. Embody in your yoga asana of dignity and in conscience the action to use our voice, our freedom of thought, our freedom of expression, and use it through political media, social media, spiritual media, every form of traditional media. Go forth with this video, with your own voice, with your own films, with your own poetry, whatever way you feel you want to embody and raise high the universal flag of human rights and freedom and conscience and dignity. Go for it. Unleash yourself. Now is the time. I will state very clearly and quickly in this series of talks, my friend Brina Gotterman has written a beautiful, compelling, revolutionary piece of literature published by the famous the most respected journal in Myanmar and probably on a human rights level worldwide, the Irrawaddy. The Irrawaddy. Go online, look at it. The Irrawaddy. Look for the article. It's going to be up on my website, here on Facebook. You can find it everywhere. May I include in this sharing? Send it everywhere. Be a voice for Daw Aung San Suu Kyi. No, not alone. It's not a personality cult. It's a voice. It's an act of compassion for the political prisoners that have died, tortured, been assassinated. I dare even use it, raped to death in the gulags of Myanmar. Be an act of metta and compassion and dharma and meditation and mindfulness in dynamic, unrelenting, indefatigable action. This is the time. This Orwellian tribunal is going on as we interrelate right now over there in Myanmar. And it's a parade, it's a charade, it's a mockery. It's a public digital rape of justice and democracy and human rights and freedom. And there stands and sits Daw Aung San Suu Kyi and U Win Myint and how many other men and women, elected leaders, that do not have the name recognition as they do, and so many others that are not in hiding, but they're moving home to home. Imagine doing that all throughout Myanmar, rallying existential political support, keeping alive moral courage, keeping alive hope through their own dynamic, courageous actions every day. A new home, a new meal, anonymously going here and there all throughout the country. Burma is under assault. And there are thousands of men and women in that country right now, and we're in solidarity with them. Double three them. The symbol of their radical revolutionary civil disobedience movement that is just beginning. And Ma Sak will fall. He will find himself in The Hague, in the prison camp of the criminal court, just like Milosevic. Or he will run to his father, Xi Jinping, in China and hide in fear, in shame with his wife and his kids. It's happening. He cannot escape or find himself in a bunker like Adolf Hitler and let him take his own self-appointed mindful cyanide. That is what he has done karmically for himself, his family, but not his country. It is unraveled. And revolution will not be stopped. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi cannot be imprisoned. She is a voice of hope, of compassion, freedom in action. Send that article, send this video everywhere, multiple times. See if you can be banned by Twitter. See if you can be banned by Instagram. See if you can be banned by Mr. Zuckerberg at Facebook because you've shared so many shares of this video in the articles to groups that you don't really belong to, but you know they're infidelity because they're Burma, human rights. Inundate Amnesty International, inundate Human Rights Watch, inundate the traditional media. Tell them this article by Brina Gotterman for Aung San Suu Kyi and for the people of Burma must be published. Send it to every newspaper, every magazine, worldwide. May I encourage you, if you're listening from other countries that speak native English, please translate it into Romanian, Russian, Chinese, Indonesian, Thai, Vietnamese, Mandarin, French, German, Italian. How many names do I have to say? Spanish. Get it out there. Put it into the world conscience. It is clear that Daw Aung San Suu Kyi was never a fallen icon. The international media got it wrong. Read the article by Miss Gotterman. It illuminates exactly the truth in 1,000 words that took the international media 3 years and 10 million words to inundate conscience of the globe with a wrong attitude. It's called corporate propaganda. I have been blessed to be in the good company of Aung San Suu Kyi, not once, but many months and many occasions, not just in her home, not just in her compound, not just in 95 and 1996, where we did a book of conversations that included her mentors U Tin Oo and U Chi Mung. She and I am not drawing attention to myself, but stating the obvious. She is not just a Buddhist, not just a classical Buddhist, not just a Satipatthana mindfulness insight meditation practitioner, not just someone who embodies in her own humble human way the eightfold path attributed to the Buddha: right speech, right action. A revolutionary figure who embodies not just metta or karuna or mudita or upekkha, the 4 Brahma Viharas, but she couples it with action. She walks the walk and encourages others politely and respectfully to step up into their integrity, their dignity, and their love, compassion, freedom, revolution, democracy in action. She is an action-oriented being who has this remarkable capacity to be still. Could we imagine being detained for 17 years? I've been in semi-mandatory, voluntary, so-called isolation lockdown here in LA for nearly a year. I'm ready to get out. I want to touch and talk and feel. I want to be interrelated. Masak, Ming Online, the tribunal in Naypyidaw, somewhere in an undisclosed location, wants to silence her, sequester her, imprison her for the rest of her life. Why is he doing this? To just shame her? That too, but she's not shameable. The people of Burma are not shameable. It's a mockery of justice. It's the indoctrination of what we call moha, evil, delusion. Ming Online has got a Devadatta consciousness, an Angulimala consciousness. Look up online and what those 2 words mean. Devadatta, Angulimala, hatred, a lust for violence, power, privilege, money. And she, as person, as woman, as feminine embodiment of radical revolutionary nonviolence in dynamic action, is confronting this darkness with the luminosity of light, of wisdom, of love and compassion. Why do I know these things? It just so happens to be the country of my spiritual birth. I'm an adopted child of the people of Burma. I am a son of the Buddha. I feel that in my heart. I love democracy. Burma isn't just Burma, my spiritual home. Burma represents. Aung San Suu Kyi represents the people who are imprisoned, civilian leaders, influencers, doctors, nurses, teachers. They represent symbolically my love of freedom. And therein lies where I stand and speak not just as family, but as global citizen of democracy and freedom. Refugees are not the problem of the country where they come from alone. It is everybody's concern. Political prisoners in Burma are political prisoners everywhere. And in solidarity with our Dharma, we are in alignment to the conscience of those women and men who are courageously, at this very moment, continuing, struggling, courageously engaging how to keep Dhamma and freedom and democracy alive even when being tortured. Aung San Suu Kyi, as it's been stated in the media, is refusing to take any funds in food from Ming Online's evil terrorist group. And I might add, it's no longer the armed forces. Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San, assassinated at a young age, was the man, the visionary, along with lots of other women and men, who gave birth, conceived of Burma's noble, dignified military. It is no longer that. And every woman and man involved in the Thamada who hears this, and it's translated into Burmese, into Shan, into Mon, into Karen, into all the various dialects, if you hear this, you are not a son of the Thamada. You are not a daughter of General Aung San. You are not an upholder of democracy and freedom. You must study the machinations of propaganda and indoctrination. I am talking to you, Thamada, in Burma. You are being used and abused and violated by one man's evil aspirations. A terrified man is Ming Online. He is absolutely intoxicated with his mana, his pride, his ego, his terror, his impotence as a human being. And yes, all throughout the samsaric journey of living and dying and birthing, no doubt all of us have been entwined in our own delusions. But today, in June 2021, Ming Online in Myanmar is the embodiment of moha, delusion, and evil. And Thamada, if you hear this, all the police, all the army, all the air force, all the navy, everywhere within Myanmar, you're being used and abused and manipulated by Ming Online. And anyone near him defy any order to continue to persecute freedom-loving people. Be sure of it. If you listen to your children, if you have children, they love music, they love theater, they love dance, they love religion, they love Dharma, they love meditation, they love interdisciplinary respect for indigenous cultures, they love creativity, they love freedom of thought and speech. Hear your children's song of love for Ma Su, Aung San Suu Kyi. No, not alone. She is symbolic. She's the embodiment, as all the other 50 to 100 boys and girls, men and women, nuns and monks incarcerated in Burma right now. They are representative of universal human rights, the freedom to live without fear, to sing and to dance, to make music, to create, to love, to have families, to go to school, the right to education, the right to universal travel. Everything is being desecrated in Aung San Suu Kyi at this stage of her life and career, is being paraded before a mockery of justice by an Orwellian military tribunal. It has nothing to do with rule of law. It's the rule of evil. Be sure of that. And Aung San Suu Kyi sits and stands in the integrity of a Dhamma-rooted, noble individual refusing food and money on a hunger strike. That is the elevation of conscience and dignity as a torch of light in this dark world. Thank you for your example, Aung San Suu Kyi. Thank you for your examples, all the other men and women in the prisons in Burma. Thank you for the families in Burma right now grieving the loss of your daughter and your son, your husband, your uncles and cousins and grandparents. We are with you. Your grief is not in silence. We hear you. We feel you. And the world will rise up just like we did in 88 and 89 and 90 and 91. No one really knew until Daw Suu won the Nobel Peace Prize, and all of a sudden it became cool and sexy to be part of this revolution. Well, let me say this to you. There is no fallen icon here. It was just a glitch based on global manipulation and the radiance of Burma and Myanmar and democracy. Hear me, Ming Online. It has never been stronger than ever. The forces of freedom and revolution are just beginning. There will be no turning back. I hear it from the sounds of the men and women in Burma. I can hear them. You can hear them. Share this video. Share the articles. Do everything that you can to elevate the status of Burma's freedom in dynamic, nonviolent struggle. I'm going to go all over the place for these next 3 days. I could go for 3 years, but just 3 days. Before I leave on June 25th, here on Aung San Suu Kyi's birthday in her native country of Myanmar, I want to pay tribute to this remarkable mind and courageously empowered politician and Dhamma sister, mentor and friend. A few things more about why I admire Aung San Suu Kyi from my first-hand experiences being with her and talking, interviewing with her, conversing with her, meditating, writing, editing, walking, eating, drinking tea. So many occasions to observe someone based on thought and speech and co-association. A relationship with her late husband and her children, her teacher, the late Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, her beloved mentors and teachers, the former general in Burma, U Tin U, one of the most remarkable minds in human history, to go from the son of a dictator and a violent type of natural-born killer to be incarcerated by the dictator and to make this incredible, abrupt, spiritual transformational from violence to nonviolence, and to author and to conceive the National League for Democracy, imprisoned for up to 16, 17 years and equally under house arrest. Her mentor, U Tin U, U Chi Mung, a radical, remarkable, measured, principled gentleman. U Win Tin, 20 years in solitary confinement, equally a visionary, a lion in Burma, a lion for democracy, a lion for human rights. A remarkable mind. I spent many days talking with him. All of these interviews and so many more. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi represents the collective. She's known as Ma Su, the mother of freedom. I'm not a personality cult. I am a being who is embodying the best of my humble ability, the principles of human rights, of freedom and democracy in action. May I encourage you. These voices of freedom are found in my book, co-authored and produced by my savant colleague, co-author, Fergus Harlow, Burma's Voices of Freedom. He and I are no one in the book. It's the people of Burma. Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, Volume 1, the largest collection of her words in her own language, unedited. Listen to her. Volume 4, we have over 50 of her recent speeches translated from her tours around the country to all the ethnicities. An incredible chronology put forth by my colleague, Fergus, Harlow, unprecedented documentation of the political history over the last 30, 50, 80, 100 years in Myanmar. It must be studied by the United Nations ambassadors, by presidents and prime ministers all around the world, by the justices in the criminal court. You must read these 4 volumes, Burma's Voices of Freedom. I wish there was a moderate level philanthropist who would just simply offer, what, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000, not even a second of interest on a couple of million. Buy these books and send them to the United Nations. Send them to the congresswomen and senators of my own country, of America. Distribute them worldwide. They represent Aung San Suu Kyi and the people of Burma when they cannot speak for themselves. Ming Online, the terrorist leader of the terrorist group Masak, wants to put her away forever. And we refuse to let that happen. That is our role in support of Burma, in support of Aung San Suu Kyi, and in our own championing of democracy and human rights and freedom in our own lives and our own families and our own countries. Right now, democracy and freedom is under assault. We know that. Let's just not point out the darkness, as it's been said. Let's light more than just candles. Let's be stars of freedom, bright lights of democracy. Let's fill the sky of delusion with our speech and our thoughts, our metta, our compassion. Let's radiate the skies, the earth, each other's hearts and minds. Let's erode apathy and fear, in preference and prejudice, in greed and delusion. Let's manifest Dharma. Let's manifest Dhamma. Let's manifest the universality of free speech, thought, and conscience. Let's put our metta in compassion and fill the sky with hope. That's who we are. Let's overcome our prejudice, our apartheid, our doubts. Freedom everywhere is freedom here. Freedom here is freedom everywhere. Refugees and political prisoners in another country are refugees and political prisoners in our own home, in our own conscience, in our own heart. Let us not be bedeviled by the politics of impotence in the United Nations. Let's not point out the obvious faults of governments. Let's be beacons of hope by radiating action and not waiting for applause or complicity with others to join the revolution. As Aung San Suu Kyi said to me, one person at a time. If one person at a time communicates to another person, just simply, do you love freedom enough to watch this video, to share this article, to support Aung San Suu Kyi, to write a text, to write a note, to do a photograph, whatever you need to do to crack the apathy of separation and apartheid. And right now, it's either act or it's over for Aung San Suu Kyi in Burma. And no matter what happens, I know Aung San Suu Kyi, even if she is put away in prison, and I beg that she isn't. You can't imprison freedom. Freedom never dies. And so that is where we are. And as I come to the end today of this sharing, a tribute to Aung San Suu Kyi, in defense of freedom, the people of Burma, I want to share so many of the attributes that I am honored to know firsthand and being in conversation and in relationship as professionals together. her love of freedom, her love of nonviolence, her love of questioning authority, her love of challenging complacency, her love of reconciliation, her love of non-demonization, non-vilification, her love of harmony, her love of unity, an independent thinker, radically discerning, someone who asks and inquires, someone who rarely ever did I see in all of my time with her over the years ever criticize. She'll say things that are quips and satirical, but unlike me, who can just become unhinged and, be saying things that are crude or rude at times, she's refined in her speech. Let me close here with one of my favorite stories of being with her. And there are so many that I haven't even told. We were together in '96 in one particular interview, and we were talking about the venerable Burmese Buddhist monk Seda U Pandita, who was the appointed heir when Mahasi Sayadaw passed away in '82, and Seda U Pandita became the Mahanayaka Sayadaw of the Mahasi Satanayekta monastery in Rangoon and many of the branch centers throughout the country. And then later, he became the chief abbot at his own monastery instead of other monasteries called Pandita Rama. And we were talking about Seda U Pandita, and I asked her, what do you remember most about him? And again, paraphrasing what I remember her saying, they are found in our books, Burma's Voices of Freedom, verbatim. Well, under my 6 years of house arrest, I had so much time, I remembered pretty much everything the Venerable Sayadaw taught me. Most of all, he said you can never be too mindful. And so I had lots of time during my incarceration to practice this mindfulness in all postures, all times, as best as I could in all contexts, and equally a sitting meditation practice that I had in the morning and that I had in the evening, which I so admire in her discipline to these mind trainings. But most of all, Alan, I remember his encouragement on the meaning of right speech. And I was, here she had been in silence for 6 years, and she's remembering the power of the spoken word. And as I extemporaneously just riff on this story, we hear the word nonviolence, and we often don't translate it into, well, what then are the actions of harmlessness in revolutionary expression? If you don't use the gun, what do you use? And how do you put dignity into action? How do you put conscience into action? How do you put democracy into action? And she illuminated, and I'm sharing now as well, my own understanding of both the story and about my own direct experience, and also my communications with the late Sayadaw U Pandita, putting voice, the voice of hope. She chose that title for our book. The power of the spoken word. That's Burma. There is such a powerful, beautiful tradition in Myanmar and around the world. We know from the hip-hop movement and rap and slam poetry and spoken word and monologue, and that is the revolutionary expression in Myanmar. When you think about and when you see and study nonviolence in action, they're not passive. They're dynamically using their voice skillfully to enact democracy waves, democracy particles, freedom waves, freedom particles. Like metta is a energetic, a cognitive wave through the tapestry of psychological, spiritual energy. Conscience and dignity and democracy and human rights and freedom are just labels, but she, along with her mentors, teachers, and allies in the inner sanctum of Burma's revolution, studied, and U Pandita was the architect of this, of the wisdom of tonal freedom, the embodiment of dignity, conscience, compassion, and skillful means through the study of tonality, auditory vibration, definition, syntax, the physics of shared space, and the influence of energy on self and of others. She would say, if the people can feel, see, and know our own love of freedom and of each other, that will be the incentive for them to take up the good nonviolent fight, to participate in democracy and this great struggle for freedom without reverting to the gun or the weapon or the bomb. That is so rad to study voice. That's Da Aung San Suu Kyi. But we rarely ever get in close to her. She's so private and so dedicated to her 20-hour days. Very few people have had the occasion, and I feel so blessed to have been in close as an outsider, a Westerner, to talk with her, to talk with U Tinu, to talk with U Chi Mung, to talk with U Win Tain, to talk with U A Win, to talk with U Win Tin, Minko Nine, Koko Ji, Nila Thane, Matida, Momomyat. Dozens, if not several hundred more men and women whom you'll never know. I felt their energy. I felt how they embraced nonviolence, and it's the study of conscience and dignity. And as Da Su was telling me in the story, which U Pandita informed and helped shape her understanding of the power of nonviolent communication. U Pandita was the man, was the voice behind that. That's where it came from. And later on, he talked about the voice and the energy, or what he called the Dhamma of reconciliation. It's an expression of consciousness, not just an idea. And, oh, wow, it's mindful intelligence, spiritual intelligence. This is the attraction for me of where Dhamma and politics and activism and trans-religious activism integrate and intersect in Burma. It is a rarely ever discussed area, but if you look in our books, Burma's Voices of Freedom, you will find many, many hundreds of pages dedicated to me questioning and Fergus documenting in the chronologies and other works that we did collaboratively the power of the human voice. I will close. Da Aung San Suu Kyi then said, I remember what he told me about right speech. And I'll continue this tomorrow. It must be, as best as humanly possible, rooted in truth. How do you feel truth as a meditative experience? We talk about it being intuitive. What's a revolutionary energy of truth? How do you just sit in meditation and access or occupy dignity? And we would do this sometimes in conversations, both with herself and with colleagues. What does it mean to occupy the energy, mindfully embody not just sensations in the body, not just thought, but conscience? When you're a political prisoner, she said, in U Tinu, U Chi Mong, and U Win Tain, and U Win Tin, you must learn to occupy the energy of freedom and dignity, or you're dead. The pain and the suffering. U Win Tin alone told me that they kicked his teeth out in an interrogation and never allowed a dentist into his prison cell or for him to be taken to a prison dentist. He had to eat and drink with a mouthful of broken teeth. That's Masak. That's Tan Shui. Think of that. Even just the slightest sensitivity in our gums, and it creates dukkha, suffering, hardship. Think of these revolutionaries. Dignity, conscience, truth, she said. Right there, it's a revolution of truth and honesty juxtaposed with propaganda and lies and deceit. It all comes back to a war and a revolution of human consciousness. It's been said, and it cannot be said enough, that the revolution in Burma is a revolution of the spirit, a revolution of consciousness. And what does that mean? How well do you remind me to remind you through example, to walk, to sit, to move? These men and women weren't on show or on parade as they meditated, as they embodied conscience and dignity and freedom in action behind prison cell, behind prison bars. Although they imprison us physically, they could never imprison our minds. This is a Da Su, this is a U Win Tin, this is an U Chi Mong. That means, where does freedom as a state of consciousness? Everything that I do in the day, I take for semi-granted. The freedom to write a text, the freedom to listen to a friend, the freedom to FaceTime, the freedom to broadcast here on Facebook, the freedom to travel, the freedom to meditate, the freedom to buy food, the freedom to bathe, the freedom to walk, the freedom to rest, the freedom to stay clean, the freedom to earn a living. When you're in a prison cell, although I've not been there as a political prisoner, all of that has to be internalized. Freedom as a state of mind. Da Su, the dignity and conscience and the freedom of being embodied in that state. She's a meditator. She knows what it means to live in unconditional self-respect. But freedom under threat in Burma and incarceration of her and other people requires a global response to love our own freedom and to see that the freedom of ours and theirs are inseparable as the air that we breathe right now worldwide. How to do that, how to embody mindful non-separation, mindful compassion, mindful freedom. Imagine, obviously, we're breathing right now. The quality of that oxygen will affect our bodies, our mind, our animation, our movement. If it's under threat, impure, or lacks quality and quantity, we begin to struggle. If not careful, we could suffocate. Ming Online in Burma is trying to suffocate the people, trying to deprive them from the oxygen of freedom. So it has to become internalized. And his only response to these revolutionaries, because they can't be defeated, because they're embodying dignity and conscience nonviolently, and they understand the oxygen of freedom inside of their own being. Ming Online is desperate. Kill, rape, assassinate, imprison. He doesn't know what to do with people who live in conscience. He thinks the only way you can do it is to kill them, imprison them. And that's the old dinosauric, prehistoric, caveman consciousness. It is not only outmoded and done, it is so over. Aung San Suu Kyi and the people of Burma are fighting for that revolutionary modernity of freedom without the gun. How rare. And she said to me, truth is the number one Sayadaw admired and shared in me, was to embody the power of truth. Tell the truth. And if you don't want to answer, just say, I don't want to answer that question, rather than lie. Rooted in that level of integrity, impeccable honesty, courageous integrity. That's the Daw Suu that the world knows. Those who know her know that. She's loved by her people. Every one of us have struggles. Imagine going from a marriage and the safety and the comfort of a life in Oxford and to go to Burma, where you're raped, you're incarcerated, where there's wars, where there's violence, where there's trauma, where there's persecution, a country held hostage by a dictatorship. An unthinkable choice challenge. How do we have the right to criticize from the distant observational posts around the world? If for 1 minute we put ourselves in the life of Aung San Suu Kyi, or the political prisoners in Burma, or the grieving parents who have lost boys and girls, or who are fearing for their own safety right now, we would shake with terror, probably. What can we do to awaken our own conscience? What is truth, she said. He said, truth, and then we must know the right words to choose to speak the truth. She's such a poet, such a tactician with appropriate and suitable language. I'm not going to get too carried away with this, and it'll be tomorrow before I finish, and I apologize for that. Truth, the choice of words, the tonality of the words. You can say the most truthful thing with the right word, but the tone just sucks. And you go, uh-oh, I just don't resonate with that dude. But if you have truth on your heart and you've got the right words that are appropriate to your integrity, and you've got that tone that isn't just kind and sweet and soft, but she can be fierce, but it's got skillfulness. Tone is rooted in skillfulness, the dynamic of, the orchestra, the singers that can play in range, and the poets of interactive shared space, the Buddha being this master of, auditory technologies that liberate the mind of other. What? Talk about slam dhamma poetry and spoken word art. Aung San Suu Kyi, and I pride myself on language and tone and speech. I'm a little rough at the edges, as you know. She's one poised linguist, energy savant, poet, revolutionary, poised savant of the heart. I love that woman's integrity. Can she be difficult? I'm difficult. Are you difficult? Probably. That's natural, right? But look at how one walks the talk. It's mind-boggling. Truth, choice of words, tone, and then the timing of what you say. Now, Dasu is telling me a story of how she remembered her teacher, our teacher Seda U Pandita, during her first 6 years of incarceration. I remember his teaching of right speech. Timing. Dasu's never written a memoir. So much of her history, her words, her thoughts, her principles, we've gathered, Fergus and I, and presented to the world as Burma's Voices of Freedom. If you want to know Dasu, you want to know the other leaders in that country and a lot of other people who are remarkable revolutionaries, get those 4 volumes. The largest collection in the world of Aung San Suu Kyi's unedited expressions to the media, of interviews, of our months of conversations, past and present, her talks, her press releases, and a detailed, geniusly compiled by my colleague Fergus Harlow. He's just such a savant, such a dedicated revolutionary. An amazing chronology that walks the reader right along the jagged, complex terrain of Burma's politics in the global sphere. It's unprecedented. My point is, you want to know Aung San Suu Kyi, you want to get over your phobias and your fears and your prejudices and your doubts, study those volumes. Meanwhile, keep it simple. Please just share these videos to those who resonate. We don't need to convince those who are on the fence or doubters. Let's do what she suggested, one person at a time, and then, Alan, our revolution will be successful. Put on your list today, this week, 5 people, one person that you feel in your life each day for the next 5 days, 7 days, 2 weeks, that you feel that you could write a little bit of a text along with this video, along with Miss Gotterman's article, along with access to these books, Burma's Voices of Freedom, and just say, listen, Tim, listen, Carol, listen to whomever. Will you please give a listen? And if inspired, would you please share with your one person over the course of the next 5 and 7 days? Would you be willing to be a force multiplier and join Burma's revolution of the spirit? Aung San Suu Kyi, a very radically misunderstood person, best understood in 1,000 words by Miss Gotterman's article. It's time to step up and support her. It's time to step up for democracy. It's time for us to become a voice of compassionate, dynamic hope and action. Would you do that, Carol? Will you do that, Tim? One person at a time. And then Dasu, and I'll close here. He said the last aspect of right speech that Seda U Pandita talked to me about is the power and the beauty and the freedom of non-attachment. You do what you do because it's right, it's truthful, it's compassionate, it's dignified. It upholds your principles and values. But if you're attached to outcome, and those expectations are not met, it's easy to feel righteous and judged. And if they're met and unmet in ways that are very radical, you could become compromised by your anger, and you might even violate through hypocrisy by taking up the weapon to fight the evil. So one must be very vigilant, mindfully aware and sensitive that when one speaks, our revolution is one of the voice of one of human consciousness. You choose the truth, you choose the right time, you choose the right words, you choose the tone, and at the same time, the freedom. You're embodying mindful freedom and dignity in action. And to be very mindful, she said, as U Pandita encouraged her, Relax the agenda to an outcome being on your terms. Do it freely. Do it unconditionally. Speak the truth. Embody the truth because it's right for you. And be nurtured by that revolutionary cetana, or that intention. Aung San Suu Kyi, be sure of it. She's human, obviously. But she's got a taproot that goes very deep into an oceanic-like reservoir of dignity, conscience, and honesty. And I close here, the quality that I admire, one of the qualities I admire the most. She has dedicated her life to other. Yes, she is a poet, a savant, an aristocrat, a politician, conditioned by her life. Unique in her expression of womanhood and politician. But what a beautiful embodiment of caring for others over one's own self-interest. Ma Su, the mother of the country, the mother of the people, the mother of democracy, the mother of human rights, the mother of rule of law, the mother of unity, the mother of harmony. And each of us know that mothers have faults, but they're mothers. They loved us. They gave to us. They nurtured us. They guided us to the best of their ability. And she continues to embody these beautiful qualities of what she calls, and the people of Burma call, a revolution of the spirit, a revolution of human consciousness. For all the people out there that practice yoga and meditation and religion, Burma is this radiant expression of a trans-religious, trans-philosophical, trans-conceptual, emotional embodiment of the direct experience of a revolution of human consciousness for the luminosity of the greatest quality that we know as life forms in this universe, the freedom to be, to explore, and to adventure. Aung San Suu Kyi, thank you for your life. Thank you for your courage. A tribute to you, dear woman, and a tribute to the people of your country. At this moment, we are with you. We stand in solidarity. Share this video. Share it with everyone in your world as frequently as you can. It is now a time to act. From my heart to yours, I will hope to see you tomorrow on the official birthday of Aung San Suu Kyi, June 19, 2021. I look forward to continuing this presentation tomorrow here at 9:30. From my heart to yours, thank you.